This is Christopher of Ferpher Farms, and I'm going to give you guys a little inside sneak peek at how we water our microgreens. So this is broccoli, this is borage, this is all our superfood mix, and they are in the germination stage where they've just started to sprout radicals. And at this stage, from when we first seed them until they start putting roots down, where the radicals turn into roots and then the shoots start coming up, at that stage we only spray, because bottom watering won't really get anything the plants can use to them. So we keep these trays on top of them to kind of simulate being under soil. Some people put weights on top of the trays. We found that it is not necessary for most of the brassicas and the smaller seeds, but for larger seeds like borage, or even larger seeds like peas, pea tendril, the sunflower, cantaloupe, sometimes we put weights on those. It does help those root better. However, with most of the brassicas and things, we don't. So we just once or twice a day, we lift up the tray, we lightly spray, and then we put the cover back down. We don't want a waterlog, we don't want the soil to be waterlogged. Just a light mix, a light mist, a couple of times a day for our environment at least. That might not be perfect for every environment. If your environment's more humid, then you might not have to water as often. And if your airflow is very heavy and you dry out quicker, then you might need to water a little bit more often. This is not something that is going to be the same for everyone's environment. This is really pertinent to know that your environment is going to determine how often you water, how much light, how much humidity, and what the temperature is in your grow room. So for us, we keep our grow room at a nice cool 70 degrees, no less than 68, never really gets above 72. But you have to remember that when you have the grow lights on, they create heat, so that you need some kind of airflow. And so we have 3 different fans running in our room, the ceiling fan and 2 other smaller fans. And then we also have the air conditioner, which blows out, a dedicated air conditioner that keeps the room at a constant 70 degrees. So with all the airflow, we don't really have any mold issues. We don't really have any problems with our soils drying out. And we use a really good moisture potting mix that is designed to retain moisture. So we just spray them all, get them nice and just give them a light mist. Make sure everybody eats. And then now once we get past the radical stage, or the germination stage where the radicals first start coming out, we get to the next stage of the shoots going up. And I'll give you guys a little closer look at what that looks like. So this is borage microgreens, and as you can see, a lot of the seeds are still on top of the shoots where the cotyledons are going to start forming at. And at this stage, we still water because there are still some seeds that have not germinated yet. So we will still water at this stage. But if you notice, we have the trays turned upside down now, and that way it acts more like a moisture dome. And we do that up until they get to the point where they start pushing that tray up, which is they're almost at that point now. And I'm going to show you what we do once they get to that stage. So when they get to that stage where we're not going to use these smaller trays as covered domes anymore, we spray them all a little bit, another light spray, and then after we get everybody then, now what we do is we are going to put what we call blackout domes. These big babies, they have vents on them in case you want to vent them, but we do not. We want to keep all of the moisture inside, and then we just cover them up like this so that it keeps the moisture in, blocks out all of the light. So what's going to happen is these bad babies who are seeking to experience photosynthesis are going to now start reaching for light. So they're going to extend their stems as far and as fast as possible so that they can grow. So when you have them under the blackout dome, they will, in a day, probably double in length. And in no more than 2 days. We never have to black out anything probably more than 2 days. And we want to let the stems get about this high. And then once they get that high, we take the blackout domes off, we give them light, and then they'll go from those really light colors to a nice darker green. And then you'll know they're about ready for harvest once they're about 3, maybe 4 inches, depending on the variety. So that's how we water, and we do this a couple of times a day if necessary. But it's good to check the soil and make sure that it's not too moist. Make sure that you actually need to water. You definitely don't want to waterlog your plants. They have to breathe. So as long as you maintain a proper watering schedule, that's the most time-consuming part of the microgreens growing, is coming in several times a day to water. And we have enough room for 140 trays. And if we have 140 trays growing, it takes a good bit of time to water. And if you have to do that a couple of times a day, it's definitely good to make sure that you are able to put that into your schedule. So if you're trying to grow microgreens commercially, that's just something to think about. But if you're just growing them at home, it definitely won't take a long time to water just a tray or two for yourself or your family. But just wanted to give you guys a little sneak peek at what we do here, how we do it, and just to give you a little bit more insight. And we want to say we love you guys. We thank you for all of your support, and happy growing.